Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material and really try to uncover the most important insights. Today, we're diving into something really fascinating and honestly pretty crucial. Ethical persuasion in marketing.
Yeah.
We're using a source you shared from Self-Sensei.
Yeah, it's a big one. Because influence, well, it's everywhere in marketing, right? It's fundamental stuff.
Absolutely. But it comes with this huge responsibility,
Yeah.
especially now, I think, when consumers are, let's face it, pretty skeptical.
And so much decision making is subconscious, happening really fast. Your source makes it clear ethical methods aren't just, the nice thing to do. They're strategically smart. It's about building trust, long-term success.
Right. So our mission today is to kind of unpack this. Look at
Okay.
the differences between ethical persuasion and the less ethical stuff.
Manipulation, deception, coercion.
Exactly. And explore the principles, the psychology, the challenges, especially online,
Yeah.
and why being ethical actually pays off, all through the lens of this source.
Okay, let's get into it.
So the source kicks off by saying, not all influence is the same. There's like a spectrum.
Precisely. It's differentiated by, well, intent, the methods used, and maybe most importantly, the impact it has on the consumer's ability to make rational choices that actually align with your own goals.
Okay, so intent and impact on goals. Makes sense. What's at the good end?
That's what the source calls the gold standard, ethical persuasion. This is typically using, rational arguments. It respects your autonomy, your judgment. The whole point is to inform, provide valid reasons, and make sure the marketer's goals actually line up with your interests.
Right, a win-win situation, ideally.
Ideally, yes.
What happens when things get a bit murkier?
Then you slide into manipulation. This is described as a pretty wide middle ground. It's about managing facts or ideas or perspectives, maybe playing on insecurities or emotions, mostly for the marketer's gain.
So the focus shifts away from the consumer's benefit.
Yeah, it starts to prioritize the seller. Now, the source is interesting here. It says, using psychological shortcuts, like heuristics, isn't automatically unethical.
Oh, how so?
Well, if the shortcut genuinely helps you achieve something you already want, like, say, a prompt helps you stick to a health goal, it might be okay. The real ethical test is, are the marketer's goals antithetical to yours? Are they trying to get you to do something that ultimately harms you or goes against your interests just so they benefit?
That's a subtle but really important distinction. Does it become unethical if they hide what they're doing?
That's a big part of it. Hidden intent, misleading info, those push it towards manipulation or even outright deception.
Okay, so deception is like the next step down.
Yeah, and the source is clear. This is explicitly unethical manipulation. It involves using actual lies or half-truths or deliberately leaving out crucial information.
To mislead you.
Exactly. To create false beliefs that make you buy something you definitely wouldn't have if you knew the truth. It gives you a false premise for your decision and totally ignores your goals.
That sounds pretty bad. Is there anything worse?
There is. The far end of the spectrum is coercion. This isn't about persuasion anymore. It's about using power or threats or even force to compel you to act. It completely removes your free will.
Like an offer you can't refuse, but in a bad way.
Precisely. The source says it presents an offer you feel you have to accept just to avoid negative consequences. Choice is gone. It's purely for the coercer's benefit.
Wow. Okay, so looking across that whole spectrum, ethical, persuasion, manipulation, deception, coercion, it really does seem like intent, transparency, and respect for the consumer's goals are the dividing lines.
That's the core takeaway, I think. The source has a table summarizing it all. Method, intent, impact on rationality, impact on goals, ethical status. It really clarifies the differences.
So knowing what not to do is important, but how do marketers actually aim for that ethical standard? Are there like guiding principles?
Absolutely. Your source points specifically to the American Marketing Association, the AMA, and their statement of ethics as a really prominent example.
The AMA code. Okay, what's the gist of that?
Well, the AMA sees marketers as having this kind of dual role agents for their company, yes, but also stewards of society. Their framework is built on 3 core norms for ethical decision-making.
What are those norms?
First, and this is fundamental, do no harm, pretty clear, right? Avoid harmful actions or omissions, and actually strive to benefit all stakeholders, including society as a whole. Following the law is just the bare minimum here.
So it's proactive, not just avoiding lawsuits.
Exactly. The second norm is foster and maintain integrity. This really doubles down on transparency and fairness in everything they do.
Which we said was crucial for avoiding manipulation.
Right. And the third is embrace ethical values. This means actively working to build trust and confidence by, actually living up to core ethical values in practice.
And the AMA spells out those values.
It does. There are 5 core values supporting these norms. Honesty is number 1. Be truthful always with everyone. Reject manipulation, reject coercion, honor your promises, make sure your communications are actually what you intend. For persuasion, this means truthful claims, transparent interactions.
Makes sense. What else?
Responsibility. This is about acknowledging the social obligations that come with having marketing power. Accepting consequences, protecting information often beyond just what the law requires considering the environment, and being aware of vulnerable groups. Marketers are held accountable for the impact of their persuasive messages.
So thinking beyond just the immediate transaction.
Definitely. Then equity. Striving for fairness, justice, valuing diversity, promoting inclusion, avoiding harmful stereotypes, huge in advertising, treating people respectfully across cultures, and again, paying special attention to potentially vulnerable segments. Persuasive content needs to be inclusive and sensitive.
That feels increasingly important.
Massively. Then transparency, which we keep coming back to. Operate openly, disclose relevant info that affects decisions, risks, conflicts of interest, accept feedback. This directly counters that covert manipulation idea and lets people make truly informed choices.
Got it. And the last one.
Citizenship. This is about fulfilling all duties, economic, legal, philanthropic, societal, contribute positively to the community, protect the environment, ensure fair trade practices, and actually work to better the reputation of marketing itself. Ethical persuasion has to consider that wider societal impact, like avoiding greenwashing, for instance.
So these codes, they're not just a list of don'ts. They're more like tools for navigating the complexities.
That's exactly how the source presents them. Values-based tools for the gray areas. They push towards what's called aspirational ethics, going beyond the minimum, being proactive, aiming for ethical leadership. And, the source mentions other groups like the BBB, DMA, others have similar guidelines, all reinforcing this link between ethics, trust, and the overall health of the profession.
Okay, that framework is helpful. Yeah. How do you persuade ethically? This must involve understanding psychology, right? How people actually make decisions.
Absolutely. You can't really talk about persuasion without talking about the psychology of influence. Your source brings up Dr. Robert Cialdini's work here, which is foundational, his principles of influence.
Yes, Cialdini.
Yep.
Famous principles, reciprocity, scarcity.
Authority, consistency, liking, social proof or consensus. And he later added a 7th, unity.
Right. And the source says these are powerful, but
ethically neutral. This is the really critical point your source makes. The principles themselves, these psychological shortcuts or heuristics people use, they aren't inherently good or bad. It all depends on how and why they're applied.
So the tool itself isn't the issue, it's the user's intent.
Exactly. Ethical use is transparent, it's honest, it uses a principle to highlight genuine value that already exists, or maybe to make it easier for you to make a choice that's actually in your best interests.
Okay. And unethical use.
Unethical use fabricates the conditions for the principle to work, or it exploits those human tendencies manipulatively, purely for the marketer's benefit, often creating a false reason for you to act. Ethical persuasion, the source emphasizes, is based on science, knowledge, genuine communication. It's about maybe changing perspectives, but not removing choice.
The source has a guide comparing ethical versus unethical uses. Can we walk through a few, like reciprocity?
Sure. Reciprocity, that's the innate feeling that you should give back when someone gives you something. Ethically. Offer genuine value up front. Think free content, helpful guides, tools, stuff that actually helps someone, with no strings attached. Backlinko's free SEO tips are a classic example cited. Unethically. Creating unwanted obligations using manipulative gifts just to guilt someone into buying.
Got it. Genuine help versus a manufactured debt. What about scarcity? That one feels everywhere online.
It is. Scarcity leverages that fear of missing out things seem more valuable when they're less available. Ethically, you highlight genuine limited stock, real deadlines, true exclusivity, like Booking.com showing only 4 rooms left if it's actually true. Unethically, fabricating scarcity, fake countdown timers, limited time offers that run forever. That's just deception.
Yeah, the fake timers drive me nuts. That feels immediately dishonest.
It really undermines trust. Okay, authority. We tend to listen to credible experts. Ethically, you showcase real expertise, genuine credentials, cite credible sources, use relevant expert endorsements. Think a doctor displaying diplomas or a tech company citing a respected analyst. Unethically, falsely claiming expertise, using totally irrelevant authorities or misrepresenting endorsements.
Basically, proving your credibility versus faking it.
Exactly. The underlying principle is the same. The honesty of the application makes it ethical or not. Consistency, or commitment. We like our actions to be consistent with our past behaviors and beliefs. Ethically, you might encourage small, voluntary commitments that align with positive behaviors or shared values. Unethically, exploiting tiny initial commitments to escalate demands unreasonably, the classic foot in the door for something unrelated, or using confirm shaming, like those pop-ups that say, no, I don't want to save money.
Ugh, confirmed shaming. Yeah, that feels manipulative. It's about respecting choice versus tricking someone into escalating commitment.
Precisely. Liking is straightforward. We prefer to say yes to people we know and like. Similarity, compliments, cooperation all play into this. Ethically, build genuine rapport, find real common ground, offer sincere appreciation, use spokespeople who are actually relatable and authentic, like brands responding personally and helpfully on social media. Unethically, faking similarity, using insincere flattery, or just exploiting physical attractiveness without any substance behind it.
Makes sense. Build real connections. Don't fake them. What about social proof? Reviews, testimonials.
Hugely important, especially online. Ethically, showcase genuine testimonials, real reviews, accurate user numbers. Highlight popularity, honestly. Feature relatable case studies. Think of those hotel signs about reusing towels that uses social proof. Ethically. Unethically. Fake reviews, obviously. Inflating user numbers, misrepresenting consensus to make something look more popular than it is.
Fake reviews are a plague. Okay, and the last one, unity.
Unity is about the preference for those who share our identity, the one of us feeling. Ethically, you build a genuine community around shared values or identities. Emphasize belonging, maybe co-create things with your audience. Patagonia aligning with environmental activists is a good example. Unethically, creating artificial us versus them dynamics, being exclusionary or exploiting identity politics manipulatively just to sell something.
So across all of these, it really boils down to, are you leveraging a genuine truth or value to help someone see it? Or are you manufacturing a situation or exploiting a bias purely for your own gain?
That's the essence of it. Ethical use amplifies genuine value. Unethical use creates artificial scenarios or preys on vulnerabilities. And the source notes, when you combine these principles like in influencer marketing, which might use authority, liking, and social proof, the persuasive power increases, and so does the need for really careful ethical scrutiny.
Speaking of increased power, the digital age seems to supercharge all of this.
Oh, absolutely. The digital landscape brings immense persuasive power, but also, as the source points out, unique challenges and ethical considerations. It references some work highlighting factors that give interactive tech persuasive advantages.
Advantages. Like what?
Well, things like masked intent. Sometimes the novelty or complexity of a new platform or app can make it harder for users to immediately see the persuasive goal behind it.
You don't realize you're being sold something.
Kind of. Then there's positive reputation. People might initially trust new tech more readily, maybe giving it the benefit of the doubt compared to a human salesperson. Plus, tech has unlimited persistence. An app notification can nudge you 24/7, unlike a person.
Right. It never gets tired or embarrassed.
Exactly. And it often involves controlled interaction. The designers set the pathways, you know. They limit how you can deviate from the intended flow, more so than in many real-world interaction.
You're kind of guided down their chosen path.
To a degree, yes. And maybe the most interesting point. Tech can trigger emotion without emotion. It can use design and messaging to evoke feelings in you: urgency, fear, excitement. But the tech itself feels nothing and isn't accountable like a person might be. Which ties into the final point. Lack of responsibility. The technology itself isn't held responsible for negative outcomes that might result from its persuasive design.
That's a bit chilling, actually. Especially when you think about behavioral design and nudging online.
It is, and it's right at the heart of the digital ethics discussion. Behavioral design uses those heuristics and biases we talked about. The crucial ethical question your source raises is this design genuinely steering you towards your own goals, like maybe making it easier to save money, or is it exploiting your biases purely for the marketer's benefit, possibly against your best interests? Covert persuasion, the source argues, is definitely exploitative when the seller's goals are fundamentally opposed to yours.
So in this digital world, things like transparency and user control become even more critical.
Absolutely paramount. You, as the user, need to understand how your data is being used and how persuasion is being applied. Consent needs to be truly informed, voluntary, specific, not buried in terms and conditions. And crucially, you need clear, easy ways to opt out or change your mind.
Which brings us to those awful roach motels.
Exactly. The source calls them out interfaces where it's super easy to sign up but incredibly difficult to cancel. That's unethical because it traps you, removing meaningful control.
And underlying all this is data privacy.
Foundational. It's a core ethical responsibility. Marketers have to safeguard data, be transparent about their policies, and respect user preferences. Now, layer AI onto this.
Oh boy.
Yeah. AI can personalize persuasion to an incredible degree. This could be used for genuine, helpful customization, but the potential for highly sophisticated, maybe even undetectable manipulation is huge. Ethical AI use demands transparency, knowing when AI is involved in persuasion and strong checks against dishonest applications. The scale, the persistence, the personalization power of digital tech, especially with AI, means that line between helpful and manipulative is razor thin and needs constant ethical vigilance.
Okay, so with all these complexities and potential pitfalls, is focusing on ethics just about avoiding trouble, or is there actually a strategic upside?
The source makes a very compelling argument that ethical strategies aren't just compliance, they are strategically sound, they actually foster lasting success.
How does that work?
Well, first and foremost, enhanced trust and credibility. In a world overflowing with marketing messages, being honest, transparent, and respectful builds confidence. That's invaluable.
And trust leads to loyalty, right?
Exactly. That's the next big benefit. Increased customer loyalty and retention. Customers who feel valued and not tricked are far more likely to stick with a brand long term. This isn't just repeat business, it's genuine loyalty and emotional connection, which is way more resilient than loyalty bought with discounts. The source mentions Patagonia again as a brand that thrives on this.
Building relationships, not just chasing transactions.
Precisely. And that loyalty and trust fuel sustainable growth. Unethical tactics might give you a short-term bump, maybe, but they erode the foundation needed for long-term success. Ethical conduct also builds a positive brand reputation and image not just with customers, but employees, investors, the public. It attracts conscious consumers, can lead to positive press, and conversely, unethical behavior can destroy a reputation, like the source mentions with Volkswagen's Dieselgate. The costs were astronomical.
That was a massive failure.
Yep.
It really highlights the risk.
It does, which leads to another benefit, reduced risk. Acting ethically minimizes your chances of facing lawsuits, hefty fines, consumer backlash, negative PR, boycotts, deceptive ads, privacy violations. These have real, tangible costs. So ethical frameworks are actually a form of risk management. And the source even touches on internal benefits, like attracting and keeping good employees. It creates a kind of virtuous cycle.
It really sounds like ethics isn't just the right thing, it's fundamentally the smart thing for a business long term. But, okay, knowing that and doing it consistently, especially in high-pressure situations, that must be challenging. What are the big hurdles?
You're absolutely right. It's not always easy in practice. The source highlights several key challenges. One major one is avoiding deceptive patterns, often called dark patterns. These are sneaky UI designs or tactics meant to trick users.
We mentioned the Roach Motel for cancellations. What else?
Things like false scarcity, only 2 left, when it's not true. Confirm shaming pop-ups. Hidden fees that only appear at the last second. Bait and switch tactics. The source notes that internal pressure for results can sometimes push teams towards these shortcuts, which is why strong ethical leadership is so important.
Yeah, those patterns can be really subtle, but incredibly frustrating.
They undermine trust immediately. Another challenge is simply maintaining transparency. Especially with complex tech or really subtle nudges, it can be hard to be fully transparent without overwhelming the user, but failure to disclose risks turning potentially helpful nudges into covert manipulation.
Right. And what about different cultures?
That's a huge one. Cultural sensitivity. What's persuasive or even funny in one culture might be deeply offensive or just fall flat in another. Navigating diverse values, norms, avoiding harmful stereotypes, it's not just ethically crucial, it's necessary for marketing to even be effective globally. Requires deep understanding.
So know your audience takes on a much deeper meaning.
Absolutely. And tied to that is protecting vulnerable audiences. The source stresses this. Groups like children, The elderly, or people facing specific hardships or cognitive challenges, need extra consideration. Persuasion techniques that might be acceptable for a general audience can be really exploitative for those less equipped to critically analyze messages. Marketers have a serious responsibility here.
Recognizing these challenges is one thing. How does the source suggest marketers actually navigate them? What are the best practices?
It offers some practical advice. First, conduct thorough research. Really understand your audience culture, values, potential vulnerabilities. Don't just rely on demographics. Second, prioritize clarity and user control. Design clear communications, clear interfaces, provide transparent, easy-to-use opt-outs. Make sure consent is truly meaningful.
Give people real agency.
Exactly. Third, seek diverse perspectives. Get input from people with different backgrounds on your team or as advisors. They can spot potential biases, stereotypes, or unintended negative interpretations you might miss. Fourth, test and iterate, but not just for conversion rates. Evaluate your messaging for ethical clarity, potential misinterpretations. Ask yourself, are we achieving this goal ethically? At what cost? Fifth, for cross-cultural campaigns, use professional localization, not just translation, to ensure cultural appropriateness. And fundamentally, foster an ethical culture inside the organization. Promote awareness, support ethical decision-making, encourage critical thinking, and continuous learning about these issues.
Seeing real-world examples always helps make this concrete. The source provides some good contrast, right? Successes and failures.
Yeah, the case studies really drive the points home. On the success side, you've got brands that live their values. Allbirds with their focus on sustainability and transparent reporting. Patagonia, obviously, with their environmental activism and campaigns like Don't Buy This Jacket counterintuitive, but it built incredible loyalty. Dove's Real Beauty campaign, which genuinely challenged stereotypes and resonated globally. Companies like Tom Essa Shoes or Warby Parker with the buy one, give one model, using purpose and reciprocity ethically. And even content marketers like Backlinko, mentioned in the source, who offer tons of free value first, building authority and trust ethically before selling anything.
Those really show ethics integrated into the core strategy. What about the cautionary tales?
Those are just as powerful. Volkswagen's Dieselgate is probably the most infamous, the sheer scale of the deception about clean diesel while cheating tests. The consequences were devastating. Massive fines, lawsuits, prison sentences, brand reputation shattered. A total disconnect between promise and reality. Cambridge Analytica harvesting Facebook data without consent from manipulative political ads. Huge public backlash, investigations, bankruptcy. It showed the immense risk of data misuse and covert digital manipulation. Then there are ongoing issues like misleading health claims for supplements, companies making promises science doesn't back up, face regulatory action, and erode trust in the whole sector. Undisclosed influencer marketing is another. Failing to clearly label paid posts is deceptive and violates rules. We mentioned difficult cancellation processes. Those roach motels lead to immense frustration, bad press, sometimes legal action, and even a seemingly simple example, like the source's hypothetical less sugar cereal that's still high in calories, that can be deceptive, especially targeting concerned parents.
It's so clear from these examples. Unethical shortcuts, especially involving deception, create this gap between what's promised and what's delivered. And when that gets exposed, the fallout in terms of trust, reputation, and finances can be catastrophic.
Absolutely. The source really concludes that ethical persuasion isn't just a nice-to-have. It's the bedrock of responsible, effective, and sustainable marketing today. It's about building relationships grounded in trust.
Which means consciously choosing not to manipulate, deceive, or coerce.
Right. And instead, actively embracing transparency, fairness, and genuine respect for consumer autonomy and intelligence. It means using those ethical frameworks, like the AMA code, as a guide, grounding your practices in those core values: honesty, responsibility, equity, transparency, citizenship.
And understanding the psychology of influence, Cialdini's principles, not as tools for exploitation, but as ways to better communicate genuine value and facilitate informed choices that benefit the consumer.
Exactly. Use them responsibly. And acknowledging the unique challenges of the digital age, the need for vigilance around data privacy, AI transparency, user control, avoiding those dark patterns. Plus, always considering cultural sensitivity and protecting vulnerable groups.
So it's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing mindset, a commitment.
It really is. It demands reflection, willingness to navigate complexity, and consistently choosing long-term integrity over potentially tempting short-term gains. Fostering that ethical culture within an organization is key. It supports people in making the right decisions and ultimately leads to a stronger, more trusted brand.
It seems undeniable then. As consumers get more discerning and technology keeps evolving, ethical influence isn't just the right way, it's becoming the only truly effective way to build lasting relationships and achieve sustainable growth.
I think the source makes that case very strongly. It's the future of successful marketing.
We've covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive on ethical persuasion. From defining those boundaries, persuasion versus manipulation versus deception, exploring guiding principles like the AMA code, digging into the psychology with Cialdini, navigating the digital minefield, and looking at those stark, real-world examples. Let's circle back to that AI point for a final thought. Given AI's rapidly growing power to personalize persuasion on an individual level, maybe in ways we don't even fully recognize yet, how does that shift the ethical responsibility? It's obviously on the marketers creating these systems. But what about for you, the listener, interacting with AI-driven persuasion every single day? What new kinds of awareness, maybe even new forms of personal vigilance might you need to cultivate to navigate this evolving landscape ethically on your end?
That's a really crucial question for everyone to think about moving forward.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into your sources. We hope this has given you a valuable shortcut to understanding this incredibly important topic.